Hello and welcome back to another speed build. I'm building an actual shack home in the werewolf expansion Moonwood Mill. It's based off of that image that you can see in the top left corner. I did not just forget left and right, it's perfectly fine. I found it on Pinterest. I would give credit, but it's attached to a Wattpad fic, so I honestly have no idea what the original owner or source for the images, but I really like worn down things. I like houses that look like they've been lived in, and I feel like we don't get enough of that in Sims builds. So I thought I'd actually build a shack for this area. It's one of my favorite parts about Moonwood Mill is that it is a little rundown. We got so many great things in this pack. I mean, I use the scuff marks, the weathered furniture that actually looks weathered, not just like Pinterest weathered, which is a whole other tangent I could go on. But I decided that the shape of this image from the internet was really inspiring. I thought it'd be fun to have a house that was kind of falling apart, looked like it'd been lived in by several different groups of people, and had repairs done, but none of them really matched the building. I did my best to kind of mimic the shape of this building, but I couldn't get it to go perfect. I did try giving that upstairs window a go, but as you can see, it clipped through quite a lot. So I decided my best option was to set things up and have it kind of through the roof. Now, I did play around with different roofing options, but knowing me, I'm going to end up going back to that one roof that we got from the not vampires kit, although there's some great stuff in that, the werewolf kit, because it just looks so good. I mean, look at that moss. How can you say no to that kind of moss? So I had some pretty good luck actually with this, because the roofing could have been a pain, and for the most part it actually lined up pretty well. I'm not 100% satisfied with how those two edges of the roof ended up, but I did find that this pack, this little edging bit from cottage living really made a huge difference on this roof. It matches so well because there's really no colors that match the weathered edge. If you go for a darker one, it looks too good, and if you go for a green one, it's obviously green, and there's not really enough green in this to justify that. So I wanted to lean into that kind of patchwork, put together, rebuilt over time feel to this. So I grabbed a bunch of different wood tones. There's a lot of fun weathered wood tones that I just don't get to use as often as I want to. So I wanted to have a little bit of stick out here from these different kind of, what's the word for that, wooden beams, just to give the feeling that the roof was kind of extending. I played with some different angles on it. I decided the ones that kind of went straight out ended up looking better than the ones that were at a diagonal angle. Those were just a bit too long and just didn't look right. You couldn't shorten them up. That is one of my complaints, is that they kind of dictate different sizes on some of these wall lengths depending on if it's diagonal or not, which is a struggle everybody has with The Sims, but it did make things a little difficult when trying to do this build. But thankfully, they all kind of worked out fairly fine, and I was able to extend out the edges here. And I will go through and add some columns so they're not just sticking out into the ether, I promise. Once again, another item from the Werewolves pack that is just lovely, weathered, and older design. I always complain about the wood tones in The Sims because they never line up, but all of the ones in these are just so unique in a good way, like very well weathered, very matching for the pack. We've got so much cool stuff. I mean, this whole tarp and everything that came in that pack. I would get that pack again, even if it didn't come with werewolves, because I'm going to be honest, I don't play with the werewolves themselves that often. Their rage mechanic is kind of fun for the first 6 times it happens, and then after that you just have a dedicated box on your property where you lock away the werewolves while you have that one sim who's constantly trying to master the cooking skill or something like that. It's the timeout shack, as I like to call it, with a single light bulb and maybe a chair so they have something to chew on. Maybe I'll put dog toys in there next time. That would be kind of funny, even if they can't use them. So as you can see, I've gone through, added windows. I'm playing around with some of the, I don't know what you would call this, the decorative edges of the roofs. I added a building pad on top so that I could actually do this. If you've ever wondered how Sims players get some cool decorative edges around the side of their roofs. The secret is you put down a wall-less room first, and then you put your roof on top of it. Then it counts as it's not a room that's on the first level, and it's not a roof, so that you're actually able to add these decorative edges. So, the more you know. I was not exactly the happiest with my search for matching tones for these different wall pieces. It took a while. I love that chimney from Get to Work, but there is not a swatch that matches perfectly. It's kind of like my ongoing struggle with trying to find a swatch that matches all of the entrances to these lots, the world tones and things like that. I'll eventually sit down and come up with a list of them, maybe a guide on how to paint the terrain so that it matches. But first, I have to figure out how to paint the terrain myself before I can teach anybody else how to do it. And frankly, that's a lot of work. So I realized that you can put the cracks from from werewolf, but mainly from vampires on anything. And this includes windows, which means that you can make windows look scratched up, dirty, whatever you feel like. I'm a big fan of using these wall lines from these 2 packs, werewolves and vampires, and the weird wall and ground stains that we got from Stranger Things, which honestly, I really don't play with the Stranger Things world that much, but the build mode items and like all of the weird decorative stuff that we got are just choice for people like me. Build a blue Suburban the normal way. We want to have a little bit of fun with it. It really gives stuff to work with. Like, where else are you gonna find blue and black colored the columns? Yeah. And also a TV dish like this, because for some reason your Sims don't need a TV dish to get signal. I guess they have some fiber optic cable or something like that run directly to their house. The entirety of the Sims world is more developed than anywhere I've ever lived in my life, but that's fine. Still has no cars. But we have bikes and brooms, so why would we need cars? We just need like a bus or something. Bus transportation in The Sims. Get on that Sims team. So I don't use a lot from Batu ever. I think I got the pack on sale mainly for some of the build mode items or the hairstyles. And I do love some of the clutter that comes with it, like these boxes and barrels and crates. It's great for industrial settings, or like if you have a Sim who's a part of the criminal career and you want it to look like they have a smuggling basement, that would be great. But for the most part, I don't use that many pieces from it. It just adds a little bit of something. As you can see, terrain paint is the bane of my existence. I wanted it to match up with the edge of the lot. It's never going to, as you can see, because the edge of the dirt doesn't line up with the edge of the lot, but I gave it a good college try. I wanted it to look worn down, kind of scuffed up, like you've, dragged your way in and out of this house several times. Of course, for your sanity, I have sped this terrain paint up quite a bit. It's probably took me, 20 minutes to figure out what I actually wanted to do here. There's a lot of moments of staring at the screen and wondering why I've cursed myself to this existence of using terrain paint, but it looks good. It looks a little worn down. I did try to go a little bit lighter on the grass when I actually get to decorating this and doing the landscaping, but as with my previous build that I released, I put way too many pieces of grass down. I think my computer has started complaining at the amount of decorating I do in The Sims. I'm not going to stop, but it definitely wants me to stop rendering each and every cobweb so lovingly as to put them between these different areas. I'm going to keep doing it, obviously, because I love cluttering things in The Sims. I also love cluttering things in my house, but that's less intentional. And I suppose something I should work on. So I didn't go through and count how many scratches, dents, and clutter items I put down, but I did discover that there are different swatches on the scratches from the werewolf kit, and they look different and have different colors to them, which is insane. I've been missing out on this since the pack came out, which was it October of 2022? I really don't remember. But I've only been using that one scratch swatch. I could have been coordinating this entire time, and I just didn't, which is wild to me. There are so many builds that I now need to go back and lovingly add scrapes, scuffs, and broken marks. They've even got like the angry teenager hallmark. Like I could make a very mad teenager Sim that has a fist hole in their wall where they just punched at the wall. That would be great. So another thing that I need to sit down and actually plan for myself is what default trees are used in each world. I've figured out that size down evergreens were in this area, along with, I believe, oak trees at various sizes, but sometimes the Sims lots use new items from the pack, and sometimes they just use old trees that have been rotated slightly and shrunk down, which is perfectly fine. It just means that if you want the place to look like the area you're next to instead of kind of a island in the center of this already developed Sims area, you have to sit down and try to figure out which trees go where. I wanted kind of an overgrown garden space here, like somebody did try growing plants and then just kind of gave up on it, because that is my experience with outdoor gardening. If my indoor plants had the available soil to take over my office, they probably would. I grow geraniums, and trust me when I say that if you have a geranium, you have 18 geraniums, because the number of times you take cuttings off of these plants, there's going to be geraniums all over your house. But speaking of an abundance of greenery, I put down plenty of grass, I put down ferns, I added a bunch of stuff from the Great Outdoors kit, or the Outdoor Exploration kit. I need to remember the names of these. Outdoor Field Day, definitely that was not it. But anyway, I love some of the outdoor decorations from that kit. They just add a different depth of green when you're doing landscaping, and they have some really nice flower swatches that you can kind of pepper in. So at one point I decided, hey, I'm going to make it so that this pipe actually leaks under the ground. And I thought, what better way to do this than with terrain tools? And then I realized my mistake and instead went and found a lovely goo puddle from the Paranormal pack so that it actually looks like things are kind of dripping and leaking around here like an actual poorly made drainage pipe would. Yeah, every time you think you can use terrain tools to do something cool, it's just not going to work. I can almost guarantee it. I've made some cool stuff with terrain tools in the past, but it is usually not worth the struggle for something as small and delicate as a puddle. So this space up here, I wish it was actually big enough to make a bedroom or a hangout spot, but with the way that Sims actually operate, you could probably barely get a single Sim to stand up here for a couple seconds. There was no placing a chair, they're not going to sidestep those corner things. So like any unused space in a house, I decided it's going to be full of clutter and stuff that you haven't checked on in years. Old tires for your car, small random items from different kits, can of gasoline. I would not recommend keeping gasoline above your house in an exposed room made out of wood that has a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Please don't do that. Also open cans of paint. But as far as clutter goes, this looks amazing. There's a lot of really good clutter stuff in Debug, even from the base game. Like, if you're dedicated enough, you can individually and lovingly place matches on countertops, which I do try to do later, but there's a lot of fun stuff. Some of the best clutter in the game, again, comes from the Stranger Things pack, because they had to kind of lovingly render these abandoned laboratories. I guess spoiler if you've never run through Stranger Things, but there's a creepy lab. I mean, what do you expect? But the piles of papers and the boxes of stuff and the random lab equipment, if you've ever wanted to decorate a random garage, if you ever wanted it to look like your Sim is a smart but very messy individual like myself. Well, I'm kidding a little bit, but no, my desk is a mess. But these items are really worth it to make your house look lived in. One of my friends, the same one who gave me the wonderful advice about changing the shower last time so that my Sim wouldn't bump their bare behind against the wall as they tried to get in and out, makes fun of me for putting down rugs, carpets, floor decorations everywhere. I can't have a bare piece of flooring showing in my builds, which becomes very difficult. I decided I want to say about a week ago now, that I was going to try to build an upside down Sims house, and not being able to put down carpets because of the way carpets are coded in The Sims was killing me inside. It looked so unfinished. I was so close to trying to rotate paintings to put them on the ground because it just didn't feel right without the carpets on everything. So here I focus a little bit less on those carpets and instead put down random floor stains, cracks, scuffs, signs of use. You know, I wanted this to be a lived in and an older house, maybe a little rundown for this Moonwood Mill area. I feel like we got some really cool stuff with the Moonwood Mill. I mean, the community hangout lot, the library, is one of my favorite spots for my Sims to hang out. I've actually had Sims spend most of their existence on that lot when I'm doing rags to riches, because there's so much stuff to do there and it looks so cool. But I feel like some of the houses that came with it aren't as worn down as a mill town. Where I live, there's a lot of abandoned mills and things like that just in, the entire area of my state. And so I know what those areas look like. And a lot of the time you get houses that have been in the family for years and somebody does an update or two and they don't exactly line up with the wood tones, and there's generations worth of stuff in the house. This would be a lot of fun for a rags to riches playthrough, although I think my landscaping choices did make it a little bit too expensive for a starter home. But if you don't mind doing a little bit of decor yourself, ignore my verbal typos, you can always download it from the gallery at Browncoataspen, all one word. Brown like the color, coat like the article of clothing, and aspen like a very pretty tree. And check out a lot of the builds I make. Even the ones I don't record end up there, so long as they're decent enough. I've been playing around with some base game builds. But speaking of clutter and my love of it, I spent a long time lovingly placing items in this closet that someone will probably never see because I'm going to put the door back on it. But I don't think there's a single closet in my house that doesn't have some pile of random stuff in there, whether it be clothes, old TVs, stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to give the feel of a used house where spaces are kind of taken advantage of. Sometimes I build closets in the game and they're just empty. I don't like the actual in-game closets because they don't serve a ton of purpose. So I like to create my own closet space and decorate them so they actually look like somewhere somebody could place things. So following that same friend's advice, I decided I was going to put down the appliances first in this, because if you're trying to figure out a Sims build, you can play with the counters. As long as there's counter space somewhere, your Sims can definitely cook. I mean, sometimes they're a little picky, but most of the time they can cook. But the appliances are something you really can't shrink down or work around, so they kind of have to go in there. After some fiddling and trying several different cabinet colors, I decided on the one that had a triangle piece for the end of it, and I did leave this in because it was incredibly annoying to get this rotated, and then it just kept changing color on me. So I finally got it clicked in the corner and left it as it was. There are some moments where it is not worth fighting with the Sims mechanics for perfection. If that sticks out a little bit through the wall, it's okay. There is enough grass, trees, ferns, and random mismatched stuff on this lot that a bit of a counter poking through a wall probably isn't going to make anyone except for me lose some sleep. And at that point, I'm just going to say there was a hole in the wall, and they decided to fill it in with that counter. Once again, I love this furniture. It doesn't look like the distressing trend of like chalkboard paint on actual good furniture, which again, I absolutely hate. It actually looks like a table that has been worn down over time. The scuff marks are from people sitting there and moving the chairs, having stuff on the edge of the table. I like how lived in it feels. I like making pretty things in The Sims, but I also like making things that look like real life stuff. Like you could see a house like this existing. Okay, maybe not as it is. It's a little bit werewolfy. It's a little bit broken down. It looks like maybe somewhere that would be a base for a vampire hunter in an early 2000s TV show. But I still like the kind of worn out, lived in, a little beat up aesthetic that comes with it. The lamp is also from Werewolves. Once again, a patchwork lamp. I would die for this in real life. Okay, maybe not die for it, but I would pick it up if it was on the side of the road. So that's hit or miss there. So, of course, I have to lovingly place puddles under all of the appliances because this stuff has been here since the 60s or 70s and has leaked so many times that the wood flooring has a bit of a warp to it, but it still works. It still works fine, so why would they get rid of it? So I made it this far into the build and realized there's no bathroom on this lot, and there's also no bed. You can't sleep anywhere. My original plan was to have the bed up in the loft, and I realized with the size of things that I was working with, the bed was not going to fit in the loft. So I decided I had to do a little bit of movement to fit a single bed in here. I'd love for this to be a more than one sim home, but with a spacing that's kind of available right now. It's more of kind of a bachelor pad, or it could have been a family home at one point, or you could have more than one sim sleep in here. It's just going to take a bit of finagling to get all the beds in. The size of beds in The Sims are, again, something that bugs me. They're so long. Like a 3x1 square, I'm like 5'7". I don't need 3 squares of existence for my bed. I could probably get away with 2. I know that Sims are all the same size. I know that the heights are static, whatever. Their beds are too big. But anyway, I made a pretty small beige bathroom. This tile looks like the same tile that went on sale in the 70s or 80s when this place was probably built. No room for a sink, but it's okay. We've got a sink in the kitchen. The sink in the kitchen functions fine. You can walk the 3 steps. I added a washboard. There's no actual laundry on this lot. If you wanted to add a clothesline and a wash bin, that would probably work. There's not really a ton of room. You could turn the porch into kind of a laundry area if you felt like it. I kind of decided I wanted to put more building oriented items there. Maybe the Sim who lives here works in construction, manual labor, likes to hold on to a bunch of stuff, but here is the end result. I think it turned out pretty well. I think it matches the pictures. So I'm going to leave you with some lovely roll credits pictures of how this turned out. And yeah, so thank you for watching.